Welcome to the Emblazers show, the show for B2B Leaders Igniting Revenue. I'm your host, Amanda, and I am joined by what some might call the Tour de France of trust building, Tim Reister.
Yes, and I do it all without performance-enhancing drugs. That's an old reference.
Oh, yeah. I used to wear the yellow bands.
Okay, yep, see, and that's all we're going to say.
And that's all we're going to say. So, Tim, it's good to see you. I'm excited about today's show.
Yeah, to me, this is a big winner for reps who are trying to figure their way into the C-suite.
Mm-hmm. So we have our upcoming summit and one of our personas, and we've got a tremendous panel on day one, and it's all around talking about how to go toe-to-toe with the CXO. Very clever. I wonder who came up with that.
Super rhymey, yeah.
Super rhymey. We've got Preston joining us today, and he's going to be on that panel. Who should be listening to these insights today?
Yeah. From time to time, when we talk to companies and we take a look at their CRM systems and we look at the contacts that they have in their opportunities, we know that business decisions are made ultimately by senior executives, VP or higher level titles. And many opportunities making their way supposedly through the pipeline don't have any VP or higher level contacts in those opportunities. So I like to say sometimes that salespeople have a fear of heights, and the goal of these podcasts and ultimately at our conference is to help salespeople become more comfortable, confident, and competent. One more C, compelling to the C-suite. And so if you are wanting to be all four of those C's, you need to listen to this podcast.
Our guest today is Preston Polk, a dynamic business leader who wears multiple hats as a senior business partner at Swan Lab USA Ventures. He's a managing partner at Glyph Consulting and also serves as a consultant here at Corporate Visions in our executive practice. Preston's impressive track record includes serving as CEO of 175 multi-million revenue business unit at Wells Fargo, leading a $2 billion revenue improvement initiative, spearheading the acquisition of a $20 billion merchant processing portfolio that successfully generated $50 million, multi-million dollars in annual revenue. It's incredible. As an early pioneer in the SaaS industry, he launched and then also sold one of the first SaaS companies back in 1999. In addition to all of that, he's a Harvard MBA graduate. He brings a unique blend of strategic vision, operational excellence to help both emerging and established companies. And I would say on top of all of that, he's just a really cool dude, and we're excited to have him. Preston, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, Amanda, thank you so much. It sounds so much more impressive when you say things like that. I think of myself as a blue collar kid from Newcastle, Delaware. And so I'm happy to be here. It's good to see you.
Well, your resume certainly says otherwise, and I'm excited to just learn more about what you've done to just create such success across different organizations. Tim?
Yeah,
also good to see you.
Well, the pride of Newcastle, Delaware is here. So that's what I appreciate is let's make the hometown proud. Preston, the podcast Emblazers is reaching an audience of mostly sales leaders and salespeople. And you as an executive who has led growth, has made many decisions to buy things, and has sat in the chair that many salespeople have to face if they're going to get their deal done. You're a proxy today for all C-level executives. That's how I want to think about this, so that our audience who hungers to know how to gain access to you and wants to know how to impress you and get you to buy from them as a seller can learn from you today after you've made tens of millions of dollars of purchase decisions and seen, I'm guessing, hundreds of sales presentations, maybe thousands. I don't know.
Not quite thousands, but certainly hundreds.
All right. Well, as a C-level executive and on behalf of our audience of sales leaders, I would love to know right out of the gate, what does it take to get your attention? And what does it take to hang with you in a way that is meaningful to a C-level executive and helpful to me as a seller to win the deal?
Interesting. I think what it takes, I tell folks all the time is when you walk into my office, I want to learn something, right? I want to discover something that I hadn't considered before. And so I think it's really important that when you walk in, that you have a really good idea of what's going to pique my interest based on my business, my situation, what your partnership can do. What is the aha thing you want to tell me when you walk in?
So you're open to that. I think sometimes sellers are like, oh man, they know their business so well, and um, what could I possibly tell them? I always say to the seller, you see more people like Preston than he does. You know, you're sitting there trying to run a company. They're trying to solve problems for many people like you. You might be open to hearing what they know. I mean, is that a good way to think about it?
I would go further to say even more than just open. There are three doubts. This is Preston's view of the world. There are three doubts in every decision maker's head. Do I have the right plan? I'm sorry. Do I have the right strategy? Do I have the right plan to execute it? And do I have the right people to do it? And so I always have those doubts. So even though you think I know everything, those doubts are running in my head. And so when you walk into my office and you highlight either I've got the wrong strategy, or there's something about my execution plan that I didn't consider, or there's skill sets that I need that I don't have on my team, you've got my interest, right? So I'm always listening for that because that's my job as a senior decision maker, is understand where this landscape is going and how do I navigate the landscape with the talent and the plans and the tools I have at hand or that I can gather.
So that was, I think, huge wisdom that you just dropped to a seller to think about being able to tether their story to those elements of doubt. Because your job is to, as a senior executive, be very confident. I'll call it. So there's a confidence gap sometimes for you between those three things. What do salespeople get wrong when they show up, even though you have room for them in your heart and mind? What do they get wrong usually that either disqualifies them from a longer conversation or a second conversation?
Well, you've probably heard this before. The most common thing that they get wrong is they walk in my office and they open up their sales bag and they dump all their product stuff on my table, right? That's the most common thing that I think happens. In terms of, really having an impact, when I think about what it is I'm trying to do, I have a vision of where I want this business to go. And so other than product dumping, it's the alignment of my vision of where I want this organization to go and the seller's vision of where my business can go with them as my partner, right? That's what I'm listening for. When you start talking to me, is like, does your vision of my business with you as my partner line up with my vision of where I want to go? And oftentimes what happens is there is no vision. Right. And so it's hard when you walk in, you don't have a vision. There's nothing really for us to talk about. Right.
Yeah. So you have you've graciously agreed to be part of a program where now you train salespeople from the perspective of having been a C-level buyer, still a C-level buyer. What do you, in addition to these tips we just heard, and also what not to do, what are some of the key ideas that have been the most effective that salespeople have heard from you and then grabbed onto and used with some success? Do you have silver bullets that you shoot and say, here's the low hanging fruit, or here are the things you have to do?
Interesting. The silver bullet. I'm not sure there is a silver bullet. What I try to impress upon them is that you have to identify, like I said, I'm expecting to be smarter once you walk out of my office. So it's incumbent upon you as a seller, knowing what your solution or services can do, to identify what capability is tied to that and what's missing in my business, and make that link for me, right? And it's, we often refer to that as like an insight or an unconsidered need. And it's important for you to think through, hey, here's a capability that's required for this organization to be successful that they don't have. And that's what my product or service can fill for them. Right.
Yeah. And so I also am curious, like, how often, I think there's an assumption going into your office as a seller that you are 100% rational, 100% logical, that this is just math problem, or for our European friends, it's a maths problem. And if the seller could just get the ROI and the TCO and the FYI and the TBD right, you're going to be sold. But I don't know. You seem like a regular human. You probably have some emotions and intuition. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like when you think about being able to have impact on you and your decision, how much emotion versus rational, logical? Like, what do you tell salespeople about what goes on in the mind and the heart of an executive?
So I think what I tell them is, hey, look, there are two systems of the brain that are involved with every one of these decisions. And well, there's two things I tell them. Well, there's two systems of the brain. There's the, you said feeling, but there's the fast system that sort of, decides whether or not this is a good thing for me to do. That's all emotional, right? And then there's the logic system that goes through, oh, here's all the numbers and everything else. And so, there's the, why this matters to me is the emotion side. And then the rational side is why it makes sense. And what I tell sellers all the time is most sales organizations, we have lots of support for the rational part. We have business cases, we have value statements, we have marketing materials, all of that stuff supports why it makes sense. You as the seller, as the primary contact for this client, you have to own why they care. No one else in your organization is going to own why they care. You have to own that, right? And so that's what I was saying. When you walk into my office, why do I care about what you're about to say? You have to own that and really know what's going to matter to me. And that takes a level of understanding of the customer. And these days, it's not just me, right? You have to understand the impact that your solution is going to have or your partnership is going to have across the organization. Because, you've probably seen all the statistics about the increase of involvement of executives in these decisions. Well, the reason for that, in my opinion, is because there are no disparate decisions anymore, meaning I can't unilaterally make a decision and have the entire organization pull in behind it, right? In order for me to get from point A to point B, I'm going to have to convince somebody else that's on the management team that this is a good idea. And if you are the seller and you're leaving me to do all the figuring, that's a lot of hard work. I'm probably not going to do that. When you walk in my office, you should have an idea, right? I'm running a sales organization. You should have an idea of what impact that's going to have in technology, what impact it's going to have in operations. Don't make me figure that out. You should know that when you walk in my office. Hey, Preston, we believe that with us as your partner, we can help you achieve a 20% growth in revenue. What that will mean, however, is the following things are going to happen in operations, or the following things have to happen in technology. Because I have to go talk to them and tell them, here, this is what I want to do, and this is what you need to do.
This is so insightful, Preston. I want to dive deeper into this decision-making process and having other folks being a part of that, and we'll do that right after this.
Join hundreds of B2B revenue leaders at Emblazers Revenue Summit 2025, powered by Corporate Visions in Denver, April 15th through 17th. Connect with top CROs, gain exclusive insights, and get buyer-centric playbooks from experts and peers. Reignite your sales leadership with evidence-based approaches you can start using the next day. Will we see you at the Ultimate Conference for Revenue Leaders? Visit cvi.to/summit to secure your spot at Emblaze Revenue Summit 2025.
Preston, I'm listening to your approach to how you would have a conversation with a potential seller walking into the door. And if I'm being honest with you, I feel so comfortable with you, even though there's oftentimes this perception that the C-suite is so scary and they're intimidating, kind of like Tim. He's scary and intimidating. Just kidding. No response there. I think there's a particular. This is a skill set, in my opinion, that you've obviously achieved, and I'm just curious, like how did you get to be sort of this type of C-suite persona? You've got an engineering background, you've got an MBA from Harvard, and the list goes on. I'm curious because this is really refreshing to talk to somebody who's had such influence in buying decision powers and all that might be. I feel so comfortable, like I could sell you my product without, of course, opening up my product of stuff on your desk.
Do you really handle salespeople this nicely and politely, Preston? I think.
Yeah, that's basically what I was alluding to. So in
Yes.
my very long-winded question.
Well, I always, and maybe it's from you mentioned engineering. It's probably more the consulting background. And so like in consulting, at least when I was going through with Booz Allen, it's like every idea is a good idea until the person puts it on the table. You have a chance to size it up. Right. And so if you're walking my office and you think you have a good idea, I want to hear it. Right. And if very quickly I determine like, hey, this isn't going anywhere, I'll just cut you off. I say, hey, listen, I appreciate you coming in my office, Amanda. This isn't going to work for me. Would you talk to my secretary outside, please? And then that's it. Right. But I don't want to quash. And again, I think it's from the consulting background. I don't want to quash any ideas before I've heard them because it might be really useful to me. Right. And so I want to hear all those things. Now, not every executive is organized that way or thinks that way or approaches things that way. And so I tell people all the time, one of the most important things you need to do, especially if you're, we work with a lot of tech heavy companies and they are working with their champions in the technology sleeve. In order to be successful, really, you have to go talk to other areas of the organization with other decision makers with different backgrounds, with a different view of the world. It's incumbent upon you as a seller to do your homework and understand what are their priorities? How are they measured? What's important to them? Why would they care about your solution? Right? You need to know, I call it know me before you meet me. Right? And I'll tell you a story, Amanda. There was a colleague of mine at Wells Fargo. I'll call him Fred because I don't want to use his real name. Fred was, infamous for 15-minute meetings. He'd have a meeting more than 15 minutes. But if the first 15 minutes, if you didn't tell him what he thought might be important, he'd kick you out of his office or he'd walk out of the meeting. And he didn't care. He did it to me, right? I'd go in to talk to me, say, hey, get out of my office. I don't want to hear that. It's not worth my time. Get out, right? He had a very different personality. Here's the thing. Everybody knew it. If you said, hey, I'm going to have a meeting with Fred, they'd be like, oh my gosh, make sure you have your story tight. Because in the first 15 minutes, if you don't tell him what he needs to hear, he's going to throw you out of his office, right? That's part of the research that you need to be doing as the seller to understand who's the audience, right? What are they going to care about? How do I connect with that decision maker, right? You want to get me talking? My daughter is a middle blocker. She's 6'2" middle blocker for Pepperdine volleyball. You want to get me talking? Talk about women's volleyball or women's basketball. She played that too, right? That'll get me started, right? That's not everybody, right? If you find out the executive likes to hear jokes, have a joke ready. You might not get to use it. Have one ready though, right? Be prepared, right? I walked into interviews and they're like, what's your best joke? Or what's the best book you've been reading lately, right? Be prepared. You cannot over prepare for these conversations, right? Who's the person? What do they care about? What are their priorities? How does that fit with the rest of the business and their priorities? Know that before you go in.
Certainly, it helps sort of humanize the C-suite here, and takes sort of some. This is. I like your phrase, like know me before you need me, right? That's your words, right? It's the same concept of like I think about you know make big feel small, like having that human connection, because really at the end of the day, right? You're still human. You've got your professional interests, but you have your personal interests as well. I find this to be very interesting. Tim, what have you experienced with all the many sales conversations you've had?
Can I just clarify one thing, Amanda, which is I'm saying that you should be prepared, right? If you walk in my office and we've never met before and you start asking me about Pepperdine volleyball, that's not going to go over that well, right? I'm just saying, like, be prepared, right? If there's an opportunity to mention it, right?
Sure. I mean, I think there's also that balance, right, between having something in your back pocket and recognizing time and place for it
Yes.
versus coming out the gate. Hey, I've been stalking you all over the place, Preston. Let's talk about volleyball. Let's talk about XYZ. You're absolutely right.
And if you think people don't come in my office and do that, you'd be incorrect. People walk in and it's like, hey, I saw that Pepperdine beat the Gauchos last weekend. I'm like, why does that have anything to do with what we're about to talk about right now? But it happens, right? It's like they're so anxious and maybe scared. It's like, I got to do something to connect with this person. I just want to put it on the table as fast as possible. It's like, well, that's not the time and place for that. Right. So I'm sorry, I interrupted. Tim, you were going to.
No, I think honestly, I thought that was really excellent because it's like know you before they meet you, but also understand when, where, and how to use that. It feels like you're saying in some ways, like, and I love this, like if someone can add value to your day, make you smarter. You said some of that earlier. They need to do that pretty early before they start talking about your daughter's volleyball. What any tips or tricks for how to gain that access or attention early? Plant something where you're like, this is going to be valuable to me. You get some more time. What could I take away to work on my, I'll just call it my hot opening, so that I do get to hang and I don't get the 15-second treatment, or 15 minutes would be awesome at that point. But I feel like I have to make a good first impression. What would you tell me?
I'm trying not to repeat myself. I was going to say something around the vision element of it. I guess the thing I would say is pretty early on, you need to be putting on the table, what the difference is going to be, or how my organization is going to be much better. And what I like to do, and I counsel folks on all the time, is, if you start this sentence, like if I walked into your office, Tim, you said, hey, Preston has had some good things to tell me what's going on. I'd probably I would want to respond with something like, Tim, the reason I'm in my office is because I imagine a future for your organization where the following things are capable, right? And I'd list off the things that are capable. And then I'd say, if your organization looked like that or was able to do that type of thing, would you think, or would you believe that that's a significant increase in value, or would that help you achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve? Right? That to me, it's sort of a straightforward, but, visionary way, I'll call it that, to introduce what I don't know about your partnership. Did that make sense?
So what I heard you say there, Preston, and this lines up with a lot of the research that we do in human decision making, is there's something about the systems in the brain that you mentioned earlier that requires, in order for a decision to happen, this sense of contrast. Like you were talking about painting a picture of an envisioned future, but doing that up against your current state. this idea of that you have a current state and a future state. And for me, as a decision maker, I need to see enough contrast between those two for me to think you're bringing some value. Does that resonate with you? Is that kind of what you're thinking and seeing?
It totally resonates with me. So, I guess the analogy I would use, Tim, is if I came to you and said, "Hey, Tim, I think it's a great idea if we get married," right? It's like, okay, you think it's a great idea. You might not think it's a great idea, right? That's a lot different than coming to say, "Hey, Tim, I think we should get married," because with the two of us together, we could go to this beautiful chapel in Northfield, Minnesota, and get married there. And then after we get married there, we'll take a flight to Italy and we'll honeymoon on the Amalfi Coast of Italy. And we'll enjoy for a week or so Italy and the scenery and all the food and everything else. And then when we come back, instead of living in this apartment, we're going to buy a new house. And it's going to be a beautiful house on an acre of land where we can paint out the future that we really want to have. Which decision is easier?
I'll officiate.
You had me at Amalfi Coast. All you had to say there is like, and now compare that to the last 30 years you've spent living in Wisconsin in winter.
You're right. That too, right?
Like, how does that sound to a guy who spent the last 30 years with negative wind chills?
So again, I think what you're trying to do as the seller here, in my opinion, is you're trying to make my decision as easy as possible. And it's easier for me to make that decision when you've painted a picture, mentally at least, of something that's much better than what I'm currently doing, right? It's easier for me to say, "Oh, I need that." And that's what you want to get to. To me, that's owning this, why I care. You care that we're going to get married because all these great things are going to happen in the future once we're married. Me just saying we need to get married, great. So if you walk in my office, you say, "Hey, you need to have AI." Okay, why? That would be my first question. Why? Because everybody else has AI. Yeah, so why? Right? What is it about that really matters to me and my organization? I need AI because there's this huge wave of technological and machine advancement coming, and AI is just the beginning tip of the iceberg. And for me to survive in the future, I need to not only understand how AI is going to help my organization now, but how we can leverage AI to be more successful in the future. But if I don't start learning now, I'm going to be behind the 8 ball. That's a lot different conversation than walking in and saying, "Preston, you need to go to AI."
Right. And I got the fastest AI and the bestest AI. And
it's the picture AI with DeepSeek and all that stuff too, right? So
yeah, you're talking about outcomes and value and impact and a trajectory with the other answers, not what it is you have, how it works, and why it's special. That you're saying is an executive doesn't care about that; they care about the end game, and until they care about the end game, they don't want to really know how you do it and how different it is. Right? You're trying to earn that, right?
yeah. And so what I tell people all the time, because you mentioned some of the components, what I tell people all the time is, listen, there are 3 things you want to be talking about when you walk in my office: capabilities, outcomes, impacts. What capabilities are going to get facilitated in my business today that I don't already have? What are the outcomes that go along with that? And outcomes are things like, oh, you'll be able to service customers faster, or you'll be able to lower the cost of acquisition of customers. Those are outcomes. And then impacts is, what's the revenue or what's the financial impact that goes along with that? Capabilities, outcomes, impacts, because that's what I'm thinking, right? When you start talking, I know that we have that capability. Oh, wait, we don't have that capability. And if you put something on the table like a capability I don't know, or I don't think we have, or that's not good enough, trust me, I'm going to dig in, right? But that's the way you want to organize your conversation. Here are the capabilities that our partnership is going to enable you to do. And once those capabilities are enabled in your business, here are the things that are going to show up that prove that those capabilities are there. And then once that happens, here's the financial impact that goes along with it.
That seems like a reasonable structure to think about organizing presentations, proposals, pitches, conversations with. I know you do a lot of deal coaching. Like you work with salespeople who have big deals on the line. And when they come to you with their presentation or their proposal and you give them feedback, is that usually the first move? You start to compartmentalize their content into things like that mean something to the executive? Or what do you usually see and have to do most often in a deal coaching session? Imagining I'm bringing $100 million deal to you, what's it most likely are you going to see that you got to coach me on?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing is, well, let me back up and say it this way. To be successful as an executive, you have to learn to focus. You have to pick out of all the things that are coming your way, what's the one or two things that are most important for you and your organization to think about and work on. And oftentimes in these deals, right, they think I have to put everything on the table, right? And they've got everything under the sun listed there. And my first question to them is, all right, for this executive, what's their number one priority? And which of these things ties to the number one priority? And oftentimes they'll be like, I'm not sure. It's like, oh, well, you're dead in the water then, because it's a little, the image I give them is you're walking in with a Christmas tree and there's lots of little shiny ornaments on the Christmas tree. And yeah, it's a nice looking Christmas tree, but I don't know what to focus in on. And what you really want to walk in and say, hey, look, we have a Christmas tree, but there's a star at the top of this tree. And this is really the thing I want you to focus in on. Again, you're trying to make the decision easy for me. I'm trying to ferret out all the stuff that you're throwing on the table to find out what's the most important thing. Don't make me do that. You tell me this is the most important thing. This is the star on the tree. Let's talk about that. We can do other things. We can talk about those other things, but the most important thing for you right now is this. And what I tell them is, if you walked in my office and you did all this, my first question would be, what's the one or two things I can do to get 80% of the benefit you just put on the table? Right?
I just want to let that one rest for a while. That as an executive, you're saying that in your head is the filter, and you might even then say that out loud. Hey, there's a lot of stuff here. And you believe in your heart that one or two of these things could drive the most of the value of everything you heard, and the rest is just ancillary sort of things. So you as an executive would be patient enough to say, please tell me the one or two things that'll drive 80% of the value? Or are you as the deal coach saying, figure that out, and that's what you should do? Or both?
I guess I'd say both, because I think of myself as the executive in the deal coaching. And as the executive, what I would say to you is, if I ask you that question, you're in trouble. Because what that's telling you.
That's what I felt. That's what it felt like. That feels too late. Yeah.
Right. If I'm asking you that question, you're in trouble. Because you've thrown so much stuff on the table. I'm having difficulty figuring out why any of it's important. Right. And so, when you've cluttered the table, right? And I'm trying to pick out which of these things is important for us to talk about. And then when I ask you the question, you're like, well, I'm really not sure whether or not, hey, you can stop right there. Why don't you go figure that out? And when you figure that out, talk to somebody on my team. And if they think that it's a good thing for you to come back, you can come back.
There's the impending delegate down. There goes the deal, right?
Exactly.
What I just heard is you have to do your homework, right? You have to have that focus story that is going to clearly align to capabilities, uncover your unconsidered needs, value, and impact. Is that a good synthesis of if I walked in your door today, Preston?
Yes, I believe so.
I don't have anything to sell to you, unfortunately. So let me start with that. Let me work on that one first, and then hit your desk. Tim, let's wrap up with Preston. Any last comments or questions?
Yeah, I tell you, this is one I think salespeople and sales leaders may need to listen to a couple times, because the wisdom kept coming in these chunks. But to me, what I took away is that you have to have your stuff tight. I cleaned that one up. Keep your stuff tight. When you get in the room, you don't know really how much time you're going to get because you're judging that as an executive as this goes along. So, open hot, open well, capturing your imagination about a good, positive, and envisioned future, and earn those next 5 minutes, not presume you have those next 5 minutes. And you've given us all kinds of ideas for how to make the most and best use of that time. So,
Preston, this has been such incredible insight. Going to pass the ball over to you. Final words of wisdom, hot closing. Let's hear it.
The thing I always worked on with my selling team, and I'm a really old guy. I went to IBM sales school. That's a long time ago.
Wow, Xerox Sales School, IBM Sales School. Yeah, there's only a few of us left.
Right, exactly. What I tell them all the time is, listen, there's 5 whats to sales success. 5 what questions. What change do I want most? What is missing in my organization? What outcomes are going to show up with you as my partner? What's the impact that goes along with that? And the last one, what happens if I do nothing? Those are the 5 whats. And if you answer those questions yourself before walking to my office, you're way ahead of the game.
Preston, thanks for joining us. That was a lot of some good nuggets, Tim.
Yeah, right.
I have so many notes written on my paper today.
Yeah.
Focus story to help narrate that conversation. I mean, Preston is, he gave such a chill demeanor, but it's very prescriptive still what he's looking for when conversations are hitting his desk. And that's really what I wrote. What were some of your takeaways as someone who is more seasoned than I? And I mean that respectfully.
Yeah, I accept it that way. Here's what I loved about it. Preston gave little bits of wisdom throughout that people should go back and listen to, because each one of them was a helpful hint for how to do something better and different, either to gain access or to hang in the room and stay in the room just a little bit longer with an executive. So those pearls, if you will, came fast and furious, but in nice, discrete sorts of chunks that I think all of our listeners should be able to take advantage of. But if you want more where that came from, Amanda, where should they go?
Well, I think they should head to the emblazergrowth.com website. Come check out the Revenue Summit that we're hosting in April 15th to the 17th. You can get a chance to hear more from not just Preston, but other CXOs, and it's going to be a great time. So thanks for joining us on today's show. If you're enjoying the show, please make sure that you leave us a great review and share it with your team members and your friends. It really helps more people find the show, and we hope to see you next time on The Emblazers. See ya.